Hey, this is Harro from Europe Road Trip Company, and in this video I'm going to give you 7 tips for buying a motorhome in Europe. So when you're buying a motorhome in Europe, it's very difficult for especially non-Europeans to look what they are after. So first of all, make sure you know what you want, a motorhome or a camper van, something like size. You must have some kind of ID before you start looking. Tip number 1, the brand and engine. Most people usually think they should really look for age and mileage, but actually it's not that important. Especially age, it's a little bit like a house. So a vehicle that is from 2007 with a good quality brand is still better than a vehicle from 2014 with a poor quality brand. So don't mind age too much. Don't look for mileage too much, because these are still engine things. Like obviously you can set a limit, but a vehicle that has 150 km is not necessarily better than a vehicle that has 100 km. The engine is just maybe 20% of the value of the motorhome itself. So tip number 1, brand and engine. There's a couple of brands in Europe that are really popular and therefore also a better investment. And I can only say from my own experience, I'm from the Netherlands. I know that in Germany it's a little bit the same, but for the UK or France, I'm not really sure if they use the same brands. But in the Netherlands and Germany, these are the most popular brands, and that's brands like Knaus, Bürstner, Heimer, Adria. Mostly German brands are very popular. And because they're really popular, it's also more likely that you will get a better return on investment. So therefore, really go for those brands. That would be my opinion. And engine-wise, there's one brand that just sticks out. In the higher class, it may be Mercedes, but in the biggest class, it will be the Fiat Ducato. And it's just, especially if you get to older vehicles, it's still Fiat Ducato, but you have to make sure that you have a turbo, maybe a 2.8 or 2.5, but don't go for a 1.9 if you're under 2005 or something, because you do want to climb that mountain within an hour. So yeah, go for a Fiat Ducato with turbo, and yeah, make sure you get the right one. You have to do a little bit of research. I will tell you later about that. But Fiat Ducato is really the number 1 to go for, especially if you want to buy a popular motorhome with a good return on investment when you sell it. So tip number 2 is the setup. There's a couple of setups in a motorhome that is more popular and therefore easier to sell. It's not necessarily that it has more value, but it's just easier to sell. And if it's easier to sell, you will always also get a little bit more money for it when you sell it. But we want to buy it for now. So a setup is very important, that you know what you like. If you have kids, you might need bunk beds. If you have a couple, you maybe don't need 2 double beds. Some people want an overhead cabin. Some people have an island bed in the back. Personally, I really like the double bed in the back with a nice big storage garage underneath, which I can fit my bicycles in. So do some research, really find the setup you prefer, because for everybody it's different. And all setups have their own kind of plus and negative sides. So a very popular one is the separate beds in the back. So if you're really looking for an investment to sell later, I think that would be in vehicles after 2007, that would be a very good investment. Same as an island bed, just because they're very popular at this moment. Tip number 3, damage and repairs. One of the things for the older vehicles is water. When the silicon kit above the vehicles is a little bit older, sometimes water gets in beneath, and there's a lot of woodworks in the camper vans, and you really don't want to have a rotten vehicle. Same underneath. It's usually they're strong, but you want the vehicles to be maintained. What you can do, if you only have the photos, get 2 or 3 of the same type and then just put them together and see if there is difference in color, or maybe there's some nice sticker on one of the vehicles. It's pretty likely that they used to be damaged, where they covered it up or they spray painted it in a complete new color. All these little things just to see if there was ever anything going on over there. And it's not necessarily bad to have a vehicle that had damage in history, but you do want to know how it's how it's fixed. If it was a professional company, if it was a hobbyist, something like that. It's just good to know and make sure that you don't pay the same price for it. Number 4, previous owners. So I know that in the Netherlands and Germany, it's not so hard to find out how many previous owners a vehicle had. You can simply do a check on the license plate when you have it. In Germany, it's a little bit different, but you can see the history of the vehicle and how many owners it had before. Obviously, if it only had one owner, you're speaking to the person who bought it at the dealership. He can tell you the most about it. Also, he will probably have all the history books and all the maintenance he done to it. And the same counts for vehicles that have a lot of owners. It's obviously more difficult to find out what's happened to it in the history and who had it and what was the purpose of the vehicle. Right. So my tip number 5 would be bargain, bargain, bargain. Especially in the Netherlands and in Germany as well, people usually put the price a little bit higher than what they would actually sell for. Most of the time, it's not considered rude when you just ask for the lowest price or when you give a counter offer to them. It's considered normal, unless a vehicle, if you see that the vehicle has put a lot of love and passion by the owner, for example, he completely rebuilt it and made something beautiful out of it, then if it's already on the low end and it's worth it, maybe first give them some compliments and see if the price is something you would bargain for, or you would just be generous and show them that you really appreciate it. Because when people sell a motorhome, most of the time, unless they're dealerships, they have some kind of heart for it. Because the motorhome does not only represent a vehicle, it also represents all the nice holidays they had with it, all the things he did to it. The times he cleaned it, the times he put new stickers on it or stuff like that. So really make sure that you bargain at the right price, at the right people for the right vehicle. And sometimes you just have to feel it in your guts a little bit. So tip number 6, be aware for hobbyists. There are some really talented people that can build amazing stuff in the motorhome. There are also some not so talented people that can build stuff in motorhomes. In my experience, we came across some sketchy stuff sometimes, especially when it's about Electra or gas fittings. When you look for a motorhome online and you see a lot of options, always ask maybe or look how it's built and who built it. If a professional company builds something inside of a motorhome, it's often a little bit safer than when a hobbyist builds it. And that's just because you don't know the talents of the hobbyist. Some people can build beautiful stuff in it, but especially when it's about electric, it can be a little bit sketchy if some art and crafts guy just built in the way he thought it was. To give one example, one time we came across a vehicle where the plug of the 220 of the electric was actually on the plug instead of the, I don't know the Dutch word for it, but the thing where you put it in. So the electric was on the plug instead of here. So that's extremely dangerous. Imagine a child coming in and grabbing the plug. So that was just asking for fire. And sometimes batteries are connected together. If they do stuff like this wrong, especially with alternators and stuff like that, you don't want to have a vehicle where they did too much with it. So just ask. When you buy something, just ask or have a good look and see, okay, is this done nicely or is this sketchy stuff? And if you do buy sketchy stuff, maybe it would be some advice to have somebody with a little bit more knowledge to look at it. Number 7. So we are at my final advice, and there's a lot of things I can tell you. There's a lot of more advice, tips and tricks I can give you in buying the right vehicle for you. But I want to keep this a little bit short. So I'm going to give my last tip, and that's basically do your research. Do the research in what brand is popular, where you want to buy it, what's the best setup, what like I said, what's the deal with the history? How many owners did it had? And do the research in the brand you're buying. For example, you might think that you buy a Fiat Ducato that is so popular, but then if you have the wrong one, I know they do it in the 2011 or 12 or 13 years, then there are Fiat Ducatos that actually doesn't have the Fiat engine in it, but a Renault engine. And it doesn't have to be necessarily bad to have a Renault engine, but if you think you buy a Fiat and you think you buy the popular one, it's very possible that when you want to sell it, your vehicle is the one that everybody skips because it's the wrong engine size. In older vehicles, I have had a lot of customers that are trying to sell something without a turbo, or they bought something under a 2.3. Yeah, that's mainly when they have a really beautiful motorhome with a lot of passion, but people just don't buy it because they really want a turbo or they really want a certain engine. So do your research. That's the best advice I can give you. In the Netherlands, if you're trying to look for a motorhome, go to marktplaats.nl. Even Facebook Marketplace is one way to go, but the most popular website would be marktplaats.nl in the Netherlands. You can also go to us. We do offer services in helping you find the best vehicle for you. I go to www.europe-roadtrip.com or email us at info@europe-roadtrip.com. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos or if you want to see a video about a certain subject, let me know. Subscribe, like, put it in the comments, all that kind of stuff. And I hope to see you then. Thank you very much. Bye.